What is up everyone, Piscean here. In this video, we're going to go over node transits and crisis correlations. So this is a original analytical compendium, nodal cycle mechanics, historical matrices, crisis windows for 1900 through 2040, application protocols, the visual ephemeris, appendices glossary, and this is the report lab edition. So we have the prefatory scope, and this compendium examines the lunar nodes, true and mean, as a primary axis of collective stress and redirection. It advances an original nodal crises correlation matrix that integrates 3 layers. First is sign occupancy of the north node, and phase within the 18.6-year nodal cycle, relative to economic and geopolitical peaks, and triggering aspects from Mars, Saturn, and the outer planets to the nodal axis. So historical data drawn from public records of financial crises, wars, pandemics, and regime shifts are correlated against nodal positions. The techniques are synthetic and original to this work. They do not claim deterministic causation. Astrology is treated as a symbolic timing language whose patterns can be tested and refined. The nodes mark the places where the lunar and solar paths cross, the points of eclipse, interruption, and necessary reorientation. So in this video, we're going to go over the foundations of the lunar nodes, Rahu and Ketu. We're also going to talk about the 18.6-year nodal cycle and economic tides, our original method, nodal crises correlation matrix, which is the NCCM, historical case studies, north node and Aquarius, recurrent stress signatures, projected windows, application protocols, selected nodal sign periods, and calculation notes and data sources, as well as a glossary of terms. Okay, so the foundations of the lunar nodes, we see the north node in Aquarius, south node in Leo, schematic nodal axes. So you see the north node marks evolutionary direction and the south node marks the release or crisis pole. So first off, the lunar nodes, which are the 2 points where the moon's orbital plane intersects the ecliptic. We see the north ascending node is the point at which the moon crosses from south to north of the ecliptic, and the south descending node is exactly opposite because the moon's orbit regresses. The nodes move backward through the zodiac at an average rate of approximately 19.3 degrees per year, completing a full circuit in about 18.6 years. In traditional and modern astrology, the nodal axis is associated with destiny, karmic residue, collective direction, and the necessity of leaving familiar patterns, Ketu, in order to develop new capacities, Rahu. When major outer planet or Mars configurations activate the axis, the symbolic pressure for collective reorientation intensifies, often coinciding with crises that force structural change. And we see the 18.6-year nodal cycle and economic tides. Louise McWhirter and later financial astrologers observed that the mean Rahu's passage through certain zones of the zodiac, particularly relative to Leo and Aquarius, correlates with expansions and contractions in economic activity. The model treats the nodal cycle as an 18.6-year economic tide clock. We see empirical alignments frequently cited include 1929 node descending from Leo zone, Great Crash, 1987 node near Aries descending, Black Monday, 2008 node in Aquarius bottom zone, Lehman collapse, and node just passed Cancer Leo peak in 2020, COVID economic shock. So the present work retains the 18.6-year framework, but expands it into a multi-factor matrix that also weights Mars node oppositions and outer planet conjunctions to the nodes. Alright, so for the NCCM, we see it scores any historical or future interval on 3 independent axes, then combines them into a composite crisis potential index, or CPI. So first axis is the sign occupancy rate. We see certain nodal signs historically carry higher collective stress signatures, Aquarius, Scorpio, Capricorn, and the late Leo, early Virgo transition. Each sign receives a base weight derived from frequency of major crises during prior occupations. Axis 2 is a cycle phase, position relative to the theoretical peak near Leo and bottom near Aquarius of the McWhirter style tide. Descending phases after the peak and the bottom zone itself receive elevated scores. We see axis 3 is trigger aspects, exact or near exact aspects within or lesser than 2 degrees from Mars, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto to either node. Mars opposition to the north node. It has been independently correlated with economic paradigm shifts. Saturn or Pluto on the nodes amplify structural or systemic crisis potential. So we see the composite CPI equals 0.35 multiplied by sign weight, adding 0.30 multiplied by phase weight, adding 0.35 multiplied by trigger score. Intervals with CPI greater than 7.5 on a 0 to 10 scale are flagged as high priority crisis windows for further monitoring. Alright, historical case studies. I left off talking about historical case studies. I'm just jumping into them actually. So the following table summarizes selected major crises against approximate mean Rahu sign and notable nodal triggers. We see positions are rounded with exact degrees varying by true versus mean node, as well as ephemeris source. And what we notice is the year, event, and end sign, which is Rahu, and the nodes and triggers. So right away, 1929, there's the Great Crash, Taurus descending, post-Leo peak descent. Right, and here is the selected crisis markers against the long nodal timeline. So 1939 through 45, WW2 peak, Scorpio Virgo range, multiple nodal activations. 1987, Black Monday, Aries descending, similar phase to 1929. 2001, 9/11, and .com, Cancer past peak, just after Leo zone. 2008, global financial crisis, Aquarius bottom, classic bottom zone match, and 2020 COVID economic shock. Cancer past peak, Saturn, Pluto, and nodal axes. And we see on the chart, on the timeline here, 2001, 2008, 9/11, GFC, COVID, watch, 2035. Alright, so Rahu and Aquarius, recurrent stress signatures. Independent observers have noted that periods when the Rahu occupies Aquarius frequently coincide with systemic stress, regime change, or collective reorientation. Examples since 1900 include 1914, 1916, early WW1 years, 1933 through 35, depth of depression, rise of totalitarian regimes, 1952 through 53, Stalin's death, Cold War intensification, 70 through 72, end of gold standard, social upheaval, 89 through 90, collapse of Soviet bloc, 2008 through 2010, global financial crises. So Aquarius Rahu emphasizes collective systems, tech, and the tension between individual freedom and group structures. When reinforced by outer planet aspects, especially Pluto and Aquarius itself, the signature itself is going to be intensified. And we see Rahu scheduled to re-enter Aquarius in 2026, which it's already there. The exact timing depends on your true versus mean node and ephemeris, placing the coming years inside a historically sensitive nodal sign while Pluto simultaneously occupies the same sign. You see projected windows. Applying the NCCM to the current and upcoming nodal periods yields several intervals of elevated CPI. These are not predictions of specific disasters, they are intervals in which the symbolic conditions historically associated with crises and forced reorientation are strongest. We see the windows, Rahu's contacts, key factors, and the CPI band. So Pisces, Aquarius transition, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, Pluto, node shift and high for 2026 to 2027. 28 to 29, Aquarius, Capricorn, continue Pluto node resonance elevated. And then we see 31 through 33, later Aquarius, Capricorn, Saturn, Uranus contacts in nodal phase, elevated high. And 38 through 40, later cycle phase, closing of present outer planet era, moderate elevated. And the monitoring note here, highest vigilance is recommended around the exact Mars node oppositions and any Saturn or Pluto conjunctions to the nodes inside the windows above. Personal charts with natal planets on the current nodal axis will feel the collective pressure more acutely. And application protocols determine current true and mean node longitudes from a reliable ephemeris, sign occupancy, cycle phase weights using the reference tables in Appendix A. Scan from Mars, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto aspects to either node within 2 degrees. Compute the composite CPI, flag any period greater than 7.5 for heightened observation. Cross-reference with personal natal nodes and angles for individual sensitivity. Treat results as timing context, not as forecasts of specific events, combined with conventional geopolitical, economic, and epidemiological monitoring. The matrix is intended as a research and risk awareness tool. Continuous refinement against new data is expected and encouraged. So here we see selected nodal sign periods, approximate intervals when the mean Rahu occupied or will occupy key signs. Dates are rounded. Consult the detailed ephemeris for exact ingresses. So the node moves retrograde through the signs. 1914, 1916, Aquarius, WW1 early phase, specifically for Aquarius, by the way, until we get to Leo Cancer peak zones, but mainly for Aquarius because it's more the collective society, in my opinion, being affected. 1933 through 35, depression, depth, political extremes, and I mean on a very chaotic mass destruction level, like Pluto and Aquarius. 1952 to 53, Cold War transition. 70 through 72, gold standard N, social crises. 89 through 90, Soviet collapse. 2008 through 2010, global financial crisis. 2026 onward, current cycle, and various 18.6 year returns of Leo Cancer peak zones, expansion peaks, later shocks. Alright, so Appendix B is going to be calculation notes and data sources. And then we're going to end the video with a glossary. So primary references for specific things like tropical ephemerides, mid-quarter-derived economic tide observations, later financial astrology literature, historical crisis chronologies, independent notes on Rahu and credit stress periods, all interpretive synthesis, weighting scheme, and informal in CCM8. These are original to this document and video. True versus mean node. So the mean node is a uniformly moving average. You see the true node includes the short-term oscillation caused by the moon's orbital perturbations. Differences are usually under 2 degrees, and this compendium primarily references mean node sign occupancy for long-term cycle work and notes true node for precise aspect triggers. Alright, and the glossary of terms, we're going to go over just a few things. So the CPI is a composite 0 to 10 score produced by the NCCM from sign, phase, and trigger rates. Descending phase, portion of the 18.6 year cycle after the theoretical peak near Leo, in which economic and social stress historically tends to rise. Mean node, the average uniformly regressing position of the lunar node and ignoring short-term oscillations. Nodal axis, the opposition of Rahu and Ketu treated as a single polarity of evolutionary direction versus release. Nodal crises correlation matrix, original 3-axis scoring method introduced in this compendium for evaluating collective stress potential. Rahu, point where the moon crosses the ecliptic from south to north, and it's symbolically associated with future development and collective direction. We see Ketu is the opposite point, symbolically associated with past patterns release and the crisis of letting go. Trigger aspect is an exact or near exact aspect, especially from Mars, Saturn, or outer planets, either lunar node that activates the axis. True node is the actual instantaneous position of the lunar node, including short-term direct retrograde wobble, and we see the 18.6 year cycle is approximate period for lunar nodes to complete one full retrograde circle of the zodiac, basis of the economic tide model. Thank you for watching this video with peace and love, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, see you out.